Samantha Wright stood at the large viewing window of the Galactic Confederation diplomatic vessel, Harmonious Exchange. The stars stretched out before her, reminding her of nights spent camping in Montana as a child. 6 months ago, she had been a Navy lieutenant on Earth. Now she was humanity's unofficial cultural ambassador to 17 alien species. "Lieutenant Wright, your presence is requested in the main conference chamber," said a soft voice from the ship's communication system. Samantha straightened her blue uniform jacket. "On my way." As she walked through the curving corridors, she nodded politely to the various alien crew members she passed. The tall, willowy Clethari with their iridescent skin, the short, four-armed Vespan maintenance workers, the floating jellyfish-like Meridon who served as the ship's navigators. None of them came from worlds like Earth. That was the problem. The conference chamber doors slid open, revealing a semicircle of alien diplomats seated around a holographic display of Earth. Ambassador Clethari, the head of the delegation, gestured for Samantha to join them. "Lieutenant Wright, thank you for coming," the ambassador said through their translator device. "We have been reviewing more of your planet's historical and cultural data. We have concerns." Samantha took her seat. "What kind of concerns, Ambassador?" The holographic display shifted to show images of human activities: mountain climbing, football games, surgical procedures, military training. "Your species deliberately places itself in danger," said a Meridon representative, their translucent body pulsing with blue light. "You engage in activities that risk bodily harm for reasons other than survival necessity. We call those sports, exploration, and training," Samantha explained. "They help us grow stronger and learn our limits." The alien diplomats exchanged glances that Samantha had learned to recognize as discomfort. "And this?" Ambassador Clethari changed the display to show images of humans with various scars, tattoos, and piercings, body modification, and evidence of past injuries, Samantha said. "Yet you do not use your medical technology to remove these imperfections," said a small reptilian Zith diplomat. "Our analysis shows your medical science is capable of eliminating such marks." Samantha smiled. "Some of us choose to keep our scars." The chamber fell silent. The translator devices seemed to struggle with her words, as if the concept was difficult to convert into the aliens' languages. Ambassador Clethari leaned forward. "You choose to remain damaged?" "We don't see them as damage," Samantha tried to explain. "Scars tell stories. They're part of our personal history." The diplomatic team called in Dr. Ethan Reyes, the expedition's xenobiologist, to join the conversation. Ethan was tall with dark curly hair and a beard that never seemed properly trimmed. He had a scar of his own, a thin white line that ran along his jawline from a childhood accident. "I believe I can help explain," Ethan said after being briefed on the discussion. "Earth is what we might classify as a death world compared to your home planets. Our gravity is stronger, our weather more extreme, our ecosystem more competitive and dangerous." He pulled up new images on the display. Earth's predators, storms, diseases. Humans evolved in an environment where injury was inevitable and risk was constant. Our psychology adapted to find meaning in survival. A Vespan diplomat raised 2 of their 4 hands. "But now you have technology to avoid such dangers. Yet you still seek them out. Our cultural research shows humans deliberately climbing dangerous mountains, diving into deep oceans, even jumping from high places with fabric devices. Parachutes," Samantha corrected with a smile. "The question remains," Ambassador Clethari said. "Why?" Samantha thought for a moment, then rolled up her uniform, sleeve to reveal a 5-inch scar along her forearm. The alien seemed to recoil slightly. "I got this 10 years ago rock climbing in Yosemite National Park," she explained. "I was with friends, trying a difficult route. I slipped and caught my arm on a sharp edge. 20 stitches. "A terrible experience," the Zith diplomat said. Scales flattening in what Samantha had learned was sympathy. "Actually, it was a great trip," Samantha replied. "One of my best memories. This scar reminds me of beautiful views, good friends, and pushing past my limits. The aliens' translation devices went silent again, struggling with the concept. You see damage as positive? Ambassador Clothari finally asked. Not the damage itself, Ethan interrupted. The experience that came with it. The story it tells. The conference room fell into discussion in multiple alien languages. Samantha caught Ethan's eye, and he shrugged. They had encountered this cultural divide repeatedly since first contact. The Galactic Confederation species had evolved on worlds with fewer natural threats. Their cultures valued preservation, safety, and the avoidance of physical change. Perhaps a demonstration would help, suggested a new voice. Captain Ben Garcia, the human military liaison, entered the chamber. His weathered face spoke of years, under Earth's sun, and his walk had a slight unevenness from an old knee injury. With permission, I'd like to organize a cultural exchange. A small group of Confederation representatives could observe human recreational activities and ceremonies. See how we integrate risk and its consequences into our lives. Ambassador Clothari's skin shifted through colors as they considered this. An observation project? To study the Deathworlder psychology directly? Exactly, Ben said. You can't understand humanity without understanding our relationship with challenge and danger, and scars, Samantha added. After much discussion, the alien delegation agreed. They would send cultural observers to study human rituals around risk, danger, and physical marks. The project would be led by Zalara, a xenoanthropologist from the methane-breathing Vris species, who appeared on the conference room screen from her specially designed quarters. I find this Deathworlder paradox fascinating, Zalara said, her multiple eyes blinking in sequence. You seek dangerous situations, then celebrate the evidence of survival. You keep physical reminders of pain. Such behaviors would indicate serious psychological disturbance in our species. Maybe we are disturbed, Ethan said with a laugh. Or maybe there's more than one way for intelligent life to relate to its own mortality. As the meeting concluded, Samantha returned to the viewing window. She traced the scar on her arm thoughtfully. How could she explain to these gentle world species that humans found meaning not despite life's dangers but because of them? That the possibility of failure made success sweeter? That visible reminders of past pain helped them appreciate present joy? The stars streamed past as the harmonious exchange continued its journey. Somewhere out there were more humans joining, the galactic community, each carrying their own visible and invisible scars. Samantha smiled at the thought of the confusion they would cause these well-meaning aliens. The Galactic Confederation wanted to understand humanity. They would need to start by understanding why humans celebrated their scars. Jake Miller watched the aliens watching him. 20 humans had been selected for the Galactic Confederation's Cultural Observation Project, and Jake found himself feeling like an animal in a zoo. The difference was that zoo animals probably didn't understand they were being studied. Jake understood all too well. The observation room on the Harmonious Exchange was designed to look like a casual Earth living space. Comfortable couches, a coffee table, even fake windows with changing Earth scenery. But the walls contained hundreds of sensors, recording everything from body temperature to micro-expressions. They're particularly interested in you, said Samantha, Wright, who had been assigned as the liaison between the human subjects and the alien researchers. Jake nodded. At 45, the retired Marine's body was a map of his life experiences. The pale line across his right eyebrow from falling off, his bike at age 8, the rough patch on his left calf from a motorcycle accident in his 20s, the puckered bullet wound on his shoulder from his service in Nigeria, the recent thin red line on his palm from a cooking accident last month. Because I'm damaged goods? Jake asked with a smile. Because you have more visible history than the rest of us, Samantha corrected him. The main door slid open, and 3 alien researchers entered. Zalara, the methane-breathing Vris xenoanthropologist, moved in a special environmental suit that made soft hissing sounds. Behind her came a tall Clothari and a reptilian Zith, both taking notes on thin, translucent tablets. Thank you for your participation, Jake Miller, Zalara said through her suit's translator. May we discuss your physical markings? Jake shrugged. Sure, which one interests you? The aliens glanced at each other. The Kolthari spoke next. Our scans indicate 17 distinct scarring patterns on your external body surfaces. We are curious why you have not used medical technology to remove these imperfections. Jake laughed, a sound that made the Zith scales ripple in surprise. You make it sound like I'm walking around with 17 mistakes, Jake said. These aren't damages, they're memories. He pointed to his shoulder. This one reminds me of how I saved my buddy's life in Lagos. Would be disrespectful to erase it. You intentionally preserve evidence of physical trauma out of respect? Zilara asked, her multiple eyes blinking in sequence behind her suit's faceplate. Sometimes, Jake said. Some scars I keep because they taught me something important. Some because they remind me of people or places. Some just because they're part of who I am now. The aliens took extensive notes. The Zith moved closer, studying Jake's hands. And this recent injury? The reptilian researcher asked, pointing to the red line on Jake's palm. That's just from cutting vegetables 2 weeks ago. Nothing special about that one. It'll fade. Yet, you have not sought treatment to accelerate the healing process. Jake spread his hands. Why bother? It doesn't hurt. It'll heal on its own. The observation continued for hours. Jake answered countless questions about human attitudes toward physical risk, pain, and bodily changes. By the end, even his patience was wearing thin. I think that's enough for today. Samantha finally intervened. Jake needs rest. After the aliens left, Jake joined the other human participants in the recreation area. The group was diverse: soldiers, athletes, explorers, and everyday people with interesting life experiences. All had been chosen to help the Galactic Confederation understand human psychology. How'd it go? Asked Lisa Ortiz, a firefighter from Arizona with burn scars on her forearms. Like trying to explain colors to someone who's never seen, Jake replied. Tell me about it, said Kyle Lewis, a young mountain climber who had recently survived a 100-foot fall. His body was still healing with external fixators attached to his leg. They asked me why I would climb again after this. Couldn't understand when I said this accident wouldn't stop me. The humans fell into easy conversation, comparing their experiences with the alien researchers. Without planning it, they began doing exactly what fascinated and disturbed the aliens most, comparing scars and telling stories. This one's from my first structure fire, Lisa said, showing a pattern on her wrist. Glove failed. Learned to always check my equipment twice after that. Nice, Kyle nodded appreciatively. I've got a good one from my first ice climb. Behind a hidden window, Saylara and her team watched in fascination as the humans engaged in what the aliens had termed trauma comparison ritual. In Confederation cultures, evidence of past injuries was kept private, spoken of only with medical professionals. The idea of casually showing and discussing such marks was deeply taboo. Notice how they smile while discussing situations that could have resulted in death, Saylara noted to her colleagues. They appear to be bonding over shared physical risk experiences. Disturbing, the Kolthari researcher commented. Fascinating, Saylara corrected. The next morning, the observation project entered a new phase. The humans were asked to participate in activities that might reveal more about their relationship with risk and physical challenge. The ship's large gymnasium had been modified to include climbing walls, weights, and various sporting equipment. Jake chose a sparring session with another participant, a former boxer named Alex Rivera. The two men circled each other on padded mats, throwing controlled punches and blocking attacks. Both were careful. This wasn't about hurting each other. But they didn't hold back completely either. The alien observers were visibly uncomfortable watching the display. When Alex landed a solid hit to Jake's ribs, and Jake responded with a quick jab that barely missed Alex's chin, several researchers actually turned away. They're choosing to attack each other, the Zith whispered to Zalara. For no survival benefit, for practice, Zalara corrected, and from what I observed, enjoyment. After the sparring session, Jake sat with Zalara for another interview. Sweaty and slightly bruised, he seemed more relaxed than he had during the formal questioning the day before. Why engage in simulated combat when there is no threat? Shalara asked. Jake took a drink of water. Keeps me sharp. Feels good to test yourself against someone else, and it's fun. Your species finds pain fun? Not the pain itself, Jake explained. The challenge, the improvement, the connection with another person who understands. Shalara made more notes in her tablet. In my preliminary research, I've observed that humans use physical scars as external memory markers, visible reminders of experiences that shaped your identity. Is this accurate? Jake considered the question. That's pretty good, actually. Never thought about it that way. This is fundamentally different from Confederation cultures, Zilara continued. We view the body as a vessel to be protected from all modification except necessary medical interventions and formal cultural markings. Sounds boring, Jake said with a grin. Zilara's translator was silent for a moment as if processing this concept. Finally, she asked, Would you allow me to record detailed images of your scars and the stories, connected to each, for my research? Jake's expression grew serious. As long as you understand something, these aren't just data points. Each mark is part of a life, my life. They deserve respect. I will honor your stories, Zilara promised. As Jake began showing his scars and telling their tales, he didn't notice the other aliens watching with growing understanding. Slowly, the Galactic Confederation was beginning to grasp a fundamental truth about these strange Deathworlders. Humans didn't celebrate pain or damage, but rather the meaning they created from it. The scientific vessel Empirical Discovery moved slowly through the asteroid field. Inside, both human and alien crew worked together to study the unusual mineral compositions found in this uncharted region of space. After 3 weeks of successful cooperation, most crew members had settled into comfortable routines. Chief Engineer Lisa Ortiz checked the readings on the atmospheric regulator system and frowned. The numbers were slightly off from yesterday's baseline. Nothing dangerous, but worth investigating. Computer run diagnostic on atmospheric regulator section 6, she said, finishing her coffee. Diagnostic in progress, the computer replied in its calm voice. Warning, anomalous pressure readings detected. Lisa set down her cup. How anomalous? Before the computer could answer, a loud alarm began blaring throughout the ship. Red warning. Lights flashed in the corridors. Alert, containment failure in laboratory section. Toxic gas detected. Emergency protocols activated. Lisa jumped to her feet and ran to the main engineering console. The screen showed a schematic of the ship, with a red warning light blinking in laboratory section 3. 8 crew members were trapped there, and the toxic gas levels were rising. The automatic safety doors had sealed the area to prevent contamination of the rest of the ship. Bridge, this is Ortiz in engineering. What happened? She called through the communication system. The voice of Captain Nixala, a tall Klathari, responded. A chemical reaction in the lab. The containment field failed. Rescue teams are being assembled. Lisa studied the readings. The rescue teams would take too long. The gas was spreading quickly within the sealed section, and the ship's ventilation system was malfunctioning. The trapped crew members had maybe 15 minutes before the gas reached lethal levels. Captain, the manual override for the ventilation system is inside the contaminated area, Lisa said. I can reach it through the maintenance tunnels and redirect the gas flow. Negative, Engineer Ortiz, the captain replied firmly. The risk is too great. Wait for the rescue teams with proper equipment. Lisa looked at the life sign readings for the trapped crew. Already they were showing signs of distress. The rescue team would be too late. With respect, Captain, they'll die before the team arrives with equipment. I have my emergency kit here. I'm going in. Without waiting for a response, Lisa grabbed her emergency kit and headed for the maintenance access panel. Inside was a basic breathing mask, but it wasn't designed for toxic gas exposure, just enough to give her some time. As she crawled through the narrow maintenance tunnel, Lisa heard the captain's voice over her communicator again. Engineer Ortiz, you are directly violating orders. Return to your station immediately. Sorry, Captain, Lisa replied, continuing forward. But I can help them. She reached the access point to Laboratory Section 3 and paused to put on her breathing mask. It would provide limited protection, but she knew the risk. The mask would buy her maybe 10 minutes before the gas started affecting her. "I'm entering the contaminated area now," she reported. She opened the access panel and dropped down into the laboratory. Immediately, her skin began to tingle as the toxic gas made contact. The mask protected her lungs for now, but the gas was corrosive to exposed skin as well. Through the haze, she could see the trapped crew members huddled in a corner, using lab equipment to create a temporary clean air bubble. 3 humans and 5 aliens looked at her with surprise. "The manual override," Lisa called through her mask. "Where is it?" One of the aliens, a Meridon navigator, pointed a tentacle toward a panel on the far wall. Lisa nodded and moved quickly across the room. Each step felt heavier as the gas began to affect her. Her exposed hands and face burned as the chemicals made contact with her skin. Lisa reached the panel and pulled off the cover. The controls inside were complex, but as chief engineer, she knew the system well. Her fingers, already showing chemical burns, worked quickly to redirect the ventilation flow. The system fought her, damaged by the initial containment failure. "Almost there," she muttered, pushing through the pain. With a final override code, the ventilation system hummed to life. Clean air began to flow into the laboratory as the toxic gas was vented into a containment chamber. Lisa's vision blurred as she finished the procedure. The gas had gotten through her inadequate mask. The rescue team arrived moments later, finding Lisa collapsed by the control panel and the other crew members already moving toward the now open doors. Medical teams rushed in, quickly placing Lisa on a stretcher and administering emergency treatment for chemical exposure. In the medical bay, Lisa awoke to find Dr. Zanfall, the Confederation medical officer, treating the burns on her hands and face. The tall, thin alien worked silently, applying regenerative gel to the worst areas. "The others?" Lisa asked, her voice hoarse. "All survived," Dr. Zanfall replied. "You, however, will have lasting damage." The chemical burns were severe. Captain Nixala entered the medical bay, their iridescent skin shifting between colors in a way Lisa had learned signified strong emotion. "You were safe," the captain said, standing by Lisa's bed. "Why would you choose damage?" "The others would have been mourned appropriately." Lisa blinked in confusion. "Because I could help them." Dr. Zanfall and Captain Nixala exchanged glances that conveyed their cultural disconnect. To Confederation species, the idea of choosing certain injury for merely potential benefit to others was incomprehensible. "Your actions violated safety protocols," the captain continued. "But they were effective. The crew members you saved wish to see you when you are recovered." As Lisa healed over the following days, an unexpected ritual began. The crew members she had saved started visiting her recovery pod. The humans brought small gifts, a favorite snack, a book, a hand-drawn card. The aliens, following the humans' example but not fully understanding the custom, brought small tokens from their quarters. Most surprising to the alien medical staff was how the visitors, especially the humans, reacted to Lisa's injuries. Rather than politely ignoring the healing burns on her hands and face, they acknowledged them directly. "Those are going to be some impressive scars," said Kyle Lewis, who had been reassigned to the empirical discovery as part of the cultural exchange. "Badge of honor." When Dr. Zanfall overheard this comment, he pulled Kyle aside after he left Lisa's room. "You speak of her disfigurement as if it is positive," the doctor said. "This is disturbing to our medical ethics." Kyle thought for a moment, trying to find the right words to explain. "We're not celebrating that she got hurt," he said carefully. "We're celebrating her choice, her courage, and we're acknowledging that sometimes the most meaningful things we do leave marks on us." Dr. Zanfall's translator was silent for several seconds, processing this concept. "You view these marks as evidence of moral action?" "Something like that," Kyle nodded. "They tell a story of what she values enough to risk herself for." The doctor looked back toward Lisa's recovery pod, where she was laughing with another visitor despite her pain. "Your species is very strange," Dr. Zanfall finally said. But perhaps there is something to learn from this perspective. As Lisa continued to heal, Zalara requested permission to include the incident in her ongoing research. The chemical burns would leave permanent marks on Lisa's hands and a faint pattern across her left cheek. Unlike many of the aliens who found this outcome tragic, Zalara was beginning to understand that to humans these marks would become part of Lisa's identity, physical reminders of a moment when she had chosen courage over safety. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Confederation High Council gleamed with polished surfaces and soft lighting. Zalara stood at the center of the circular chamber, surrounded by representatives from 17 different species. After months of research, today she would present her findings on human psychology to the most influential leaders in known space. Distinguished council members, Zalara began, her environment suit making soft hissing sounds as she spoke. I'm honored to present the preliminary results of my research into what we have termed Deathworlder psychology, with specific focus on the human relationship with physical risk and bodily markings. The holographic display behind her activated, showing images of Earth, its violent weather systems, dangerous predators, and harsh environments. Humans evolved on a planet with significantly higher gravity, more extreme weather patterns, and more aggressive fauna than any Confederation homeworld, she explained. Their entire evolutionary history is one of constant struggle against environmental forces that would be fatal to most of our species. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. The idea of evolving in such conditions was disturbing to beings from gentler worlds. Initially, we misunderstood human behaviors, Zalara continued. We thought they worshipped pain or damage as we observed their voluntary risk-taking and their preservation of injury markings. She displayed holographic images from her research. A runner displaying a medal from a marathon, a young woman proudly showing a surgical scar from a life-saving operation, a group of disaster survivors with matching memorial tattoos. But my research has revealed something more complex, Zalara said. Humans do not worship pain. Rather, they have evolved a relationship with physical risk that has become integral to their concept of meaning and identity. The senior ethicist, an ancient Clothari with pale, almost translucent skin, raised a hand. Explain this concept of meaning as it relates to physical harm. Zalara nodded. For species evolved on gentle worlds like ours, safety is assumed and risk is aberrant. Our cultures naturally developed around values of preservation and continuation. She paused, making sure her next words were precise. For Deathworlders like humans, risk is constant and survival itself is an achievement. They have culturally transformed the inevitability of injury into a framework for meaning. Their scars are not just medical conditions to be treated. They are narrative devices, the council murmured among themselves. This concept was difficult for many to grasp. I have brought witnesses to help illustrate this psychological pattern, Zalara said, gesturing toward the chamber entrance. The doors opened and several humans entered. Jake Miller, Lisa Ortiz, Kyle Lewis, and other participants from the observation project walked in, looking slightly uncomfortable in the formal setting but determined to represent humanity well. Captain Nicole Baker led the group. She walked with a slight limp, using a sleek prosthetic leg that was clearly visible below her uniform skirt. She had lost her leg years earlier in a civilian rescue operation on Earth. Captain Baker, Zalara said, would you please explain to the council your perspective on your physical condition? Nicole stepped forward confidently. 23 years ago, I was a rescue pilot. During a flood in Eastern America, I was helping evacuate a family trapped on their roof. While loading the last child, debris hit my helicopter. I had to choose between my leg and that child's life. The council was silent, watching intently. The doctors couldn't save my leg, Nicole continued. I could have hidden it, worn long pants, maybe even gotten nervous system implants to eliminate any trace of what happened. But I chose not to. Why? Asked the senior ethicist. Nicole smiled slightly. This prosthetic reminds me every day of a choice I made that I'm proud of. It tells me something about who I am and what matters to me. She looked around at the alien council. Scars tell us we survived something. They remind us of what matters enough to risk ourselves for. Without risk, how do you know what you truly value? The council chambers erupted in discussion. Many members seemed disturbed by this perspective, while others appeared intrigued. The senior ethicist raised his hands for silence. This suggests, he said slowly, that the human willingness to risk physical harm might represent not a defect, but an alternative, adaptation, one that allowed moral concepts like sacrifice and courage to develop differently than in Confederation cultures. Solara nodded. That is my conclusion as well. Next, Lisa Ortiz stepped forward. The chemical burns on her hands and the faint pattern across her left cheek were visible to all. Engineer Ortiz, Shalara said, please tell the council about your experience on the empirical discovery. Lisa recounted the story of the toxic gas leak and her decision to help the trapped crew members, knowing she would be injured in the process. Could you explain your reasoning? Asked a Meridon council member, their translucent body pulsing with blue light. Why choose certain injury for uncertain benefit to others? Because that's what humans do, Lisa said simply. We help each other, even when it costs us something. Jake Miller spoke next, showing the council his bullet wound from Nigeria. I got this saving my friend during an ambush. He's alive today because I moved without thinking. Would I do it again knowing I'd get shot? Absolutely. One by one, the humans shared their stories. Some scars came from accidents, others from deliberate choices. Some were hidden, others visible, but each carried meaning, a physical reminder of a moment that had shaped their lives. When the humans finished speaking, the council chamber was quiet. The aliens were processing what they had heard, a fundamentally different way of relating to physical existence than anything in their experience. The senior ethicist finally broke the silence. Silara, your research forces us to confront an uncomfortable possibility. We have long considered our aversion to physical risk as evidence of our cultural advancement. Perhaps we have been limited in our perspective. Shalara's multiple eyes blinked in sequence behind her faceplate. I believe there is wisdom in both approaches, Honored Elder. Our caution preserves life and reduces suffering. Their willingness to risk themselves has produced remarkable acts of courage and sacrifice. And these marks they bear, said another council member, they are not merely medical conditions, they are stories written on the body. Precisely, Solara replied. My final observation is this. We have long wondered how humans with their shorter lifespans and physically vulnerable bodies have achieved so much as a species. Perhaps this is part of the answer. They transform their greatest vulnerability, their physical fragility, into their greatest strength. As the council session concluded, the senior ethicist approached Nicole Baker. The ancient alien studied her for a moment, then spoke with surprising directness. Captain, I have lived 720 of your Earth years, and in all that time, I have avoided all physical risk and change. I have no marks, no scars, nothing to show for my centuries of existence except my continued survival. That's quite an achievement, Nicole replied diplomatically. The alien's skin shifted to a deeper blue. Perhaps. But I wonder now what stories my body would tell. Had I lived differently? As the humans left the council chamber, Zalara remained behind to answer technical questions about her research. But her gaze followed the Deathworlders as they walked away, their bodies carrying the visible evidence of lives lived with courage, sacrifice, and meaning that most Confederation species were only beginning to understand. 1 year after first contact, the Galactic Confederation prepared for its centennial celebration. For the first time in its 100-year history, humans would attend the grand ceremony. The planning committee, composed of representatives from all 17 Confederation species, faced an unexpected challenge: how to include humans in rituals designed for beings with fundamentally different physical and psychological needs. Perhaps we should create a separate human section, suggested a Vespen coordinator, therefore, arms moving in synchronized patterns of concern. Their comfort requirements are so different from ours. That would defeat the purpose of inclusion, countered Ambassador Clethari. We must find a way to truly integrate them into our ceremonies, The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Mira Patel, a human anthropologist who had been studying Confederation cultures for the past 6 months, requested permission to address the committee. "I hear you're having trouble fitting us into your celebration," Mira said, her dark eyes scanning the alien faces around the table. "May I suggest a solution?" The committee turned their attention to her. "If you want to understand us," she suggested, "let us show you our rituals of remembrance and in turn show us yours." A true exchange of cultural meaning. The committee members exchanged glances, their various communication signals flashing, skin colors waving, appendages pulsing bioluminescence indicating both interest and uncertainty. "What form would this exchange take?" asked the head coordinator, a floating Meridon. Mira smiled. "A ceremony where both sides demonstrate how they honor their histories and mark significant moments. You show us your perfect preservation rituals, and we'll show you our storytelling traditions." After much discussion, the committee agreed. The human delegation would have 15 minutes during the centennial celebration to demonstrate an Earth ritual before the main Confederation ceremonies began. The day of the celebration arrived. The Confederation's capital world was decorated with living light sculptures and harmonic vibration fields. Thousands of beings from across known space gathered in the grand ceremonial arena, a vast circular space with terraced seating surrounding a central platform. The human delegation, led by Admiral Frank Rivera, prepared in a side chamber. Frank's face bore a prominent scar from a space debris incident during an early exploration mission. The 20 humans with him wore formal uniforms or traditional Earth clothing, each selected to represent different aspects of human culture. "Are you nervous?" asked Solara, who had been invited to observe the preparation as part of her ongoing research. Frank adjusted his uniform collar. "A little. It's not every day you represent your entire species." "Your ritual was approved by the committee," Solara assured him, "though I don't think they fully understand what you plan to do." Frank smiled. "Understanding is what today is all about." When the time came, the human delegation entered the ceremonial arena. The Confederation species watched with interest as the humans arranged themselves in a circle at the center of the platform. Admiral Rivera stepped forward to address the gathered aliens. "Distinguished members of the Galactic Confederation," he began, his voice translated into 17 different languages simultaneously. "On behalf of Earth, we thank you for including us in this historic celebration." The audience responded with their various signs of acknowledgement: light patterns, scent releases, vibration sequences. "Today we will share with you a human tradition called a storytelling circle," Frank continued. "In this ritual we share objects and marks that connect us to meaningful moments in our lives." The humans sat in their circle facing outward so all could see them. One by one they each presented something personal and told its story. Lisa Ortiz showed her scarred hands from the empirical discovery incident. Jake Miller displayed a worn metal coin given to him by a fellow soldier who didn't survive. Mira Patel unwrapped a small stone pendant, explaining how it had belonged to her grandmother who raised her. Some showed scars, others displayed mementos, but each item represented a moment when they had faced challenge, loss, or growth. The Confederation audience watched in fascinated silence as the humans openly shared what many alien cultures would consider intensely private experiences. When Admiral Rivera's turn came, he stood and faced the audience. The aliens expected him to point to the prominent scar on his face, which many had noticed and politely avoided mentioning. Instead, he held up a simple gold wedding ring. "This," he explained, his voice steady, "represents the greatest risk I ever took, loving someone knowing I could lose them. My wife died 10 years ago from an illness our medicine couldn't cure. This ring reminds me of her courage and of the joy we shared despite knowing it wouldn't last forever." He turned slowly, allowing all to see the small metal circle. "Not all scars are visible, but all remind us what we're willing to endure for, what matters." The ceremonial arena was completely silent. The concept that emotional wounds could be similar to physical ones, and equally worth acknowledging, was new to many Confederation species. When the human ritual concluded, the Confederation began their traditional ceremonies. Elegant beings moved in perfect precision, demonstrating rituals that celebrated unblemished continuation and the avoidance of all unnecessary change or risk. The beauty of their performances was undeniable. Carefully preserved movements passed down through generations without alteration. At the conclusion of the ceremonies, gifts were exchanged. Confederation representatives presented each human with a living crystal sculpture, traditional gifts representing unchanging perfection. The humans, in turn, presented the Confederation with a large quilt patched together from uniform pieces of humans who had served on joint missions, including some who hadn't survived. Each piece of fabric has a story, Mira explained as the quilt was carefully displayed. Together they form something new and beautiful, just as our shared experiences create a new understanding between our cultures. That evening, as the celebration continued with feasting and music, Solara found Admiral Rivera standing alone, looking out at the capital world's 3 moons. "Your ritual was most illuminating," Solara said, joining him. "The council members are still discussing it." Frank nodded. "And what do you think as our chief researcher?" Shalara's environment suit hissed softly as she considered her response. "I think I finally understand something essential about humans. You don't celebrate pain itself, but rather the meaning you create from it." "That's well put," Frank agreed. "My final research publication will be presented next month," Solara said. "Would you like to know my conclusion?" "I would. While we may never fully understand each other's relationship with physical risk and change," Solara said, "we have discovered something more valuable, that sentient beings can develop entirely different relationships with suffering and still build meaningful moral frameworks around them. The galaxy is richer for containing both perspectives." Frank smiled. "I couldn't have said it better myself." As the celebration continued around them, Frank looked at the gathered species, so different in form and thought, yet all seeking connection and meaning in their own ways. Tomorrow he would return to Earth with a new understanding as well, carried in his official report to Earth's leadership. "We come from different worlds and different evolutionary paths," he had written. "They find our scars disturbing. We find their unblemished existence somewhat hollow. But in these differences we've found the beginning of true exchange, not just of goods or technologies, but of ways to be alive in this universe." And perhaps that, Frank thought as he rejoined the celebration, was the most meaningful discovery of all.